even looking back as a kid, even in sports practices, I always wanted to be first and just warming up. When we were running, I always wanted to be first. So I don't know. Yeah, there's some sort of intrinsic thing I think that just drives me.
Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Commercial Real Estate Secrets. I'm your host, Austin Hare, and our guest is Dr. Josh Cochran, and he's from the Northwest. He's the founder and CEO of Cochran Real Estate. He's also doctor of Dr. C Family Dentistry, and he currently has 5 practices that collect over $1 million a month in revenue, and they are soon to own 7. So he's been super busy. He's owner of commercial real estate buildings, actively involved in single family rentals, multifamily rentals, self-storage, and some other commercial real estate. And so, Josh, pleasure to have you on the show today.
Pleasure to be here, Austin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, you've done a lot in terms of dentistry and real estate and all those types of things. And so, I always like to get a little bit of a background because it's really easy to get into the nitty gritty and the day to day. But I think we can provide some help and motivation for people who are maybe just getting started and they kind of want to know like what led up to this. So, in your situation, first of all, did you do anything as a young kid that was like entrepreneurial that maybe set you apart, that thought you were a little different, or maybe not even that you're different, but like, hey, I might have a future in business?
That's a great question. I'm sure if I thought about it, I'd think of some things. I'll just mention the things that popped up when you said that, but I'm sure it's not comprehensive. I think my dad nudged me a little as a child. We would go gather cherries from a local orchard and then sell them at outdoor symphony or something, little things like that. And I hated it as a kid, right? Totally uncomfortable with it. Um, I think I just always had a strong internal drive. I have no idea how it developed,
Hmm.
but I just wanted to take over the world, not in a dominance fashion,
Not in
but
like a
in
dictatorship fashion, but like an
yeah,
entrepreneurial
more
fashion.
this not conquer, right? Yeah, whatever.
No, I know what
Just
you
be
mean.
after it.
Yeah, conquer is not a bad word, right? You want to
Well,
grow and conquer, right?
I
Like
know.
take your stake, right? And like,
Just be successful. Build something. Maybe that's a better word there. I wanted to
yeah.
build
Well,
something, do
and,
something.
and that's interesting because how much of it is nature versus nurture. Like when you look at somebody like Shaquille O'Neal, who's like 7 foot tall, and you look at a Chinese woman who's like 4'10", you can very clearly see like, oh wow, like he's gonna be good at basketball. She's not. Like that's very visibly evident. But you look at somebody like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and you compare them to an average person, there's no physical differences, right? But if you could somehow see internally what goes on in their mind, their entrepreneurial skill set, there probably is a really big difference. And we don't have the luxury, right? It'd be interesting if you could actually physically see that manifested. We can't. And so maybe in your situation, it's just one of those things, you had something intrinsically that just drove you to do things, try things, and take risks.
Yeah, even looking back as a kid, even in sports practices, I always wanted to be first and just warming up. When we were running, I always wanted to be first. So I don't know. Yeah, there's some sort of intrinsic thing I think that just drives me. So
Yeah, that's cool. And so like, along those lines, did that, you had to drive, but like, did that motivate you? Like, how did that motivate you in terms of taking action? Like, did you wake up earlier to plan out your day? Did you focus on, setting schedules or any sort of like intentional positive self-talk or, reinforce like thoughts that reinforce positive beliefs or anything like that? Like, is
I
that a,
think all these leadership skills kind of compound. I think there wasn't much early on, right? You start reading a leadership book when you're younger, and at least I was bored out of my mind. I didn't really feel like it was applicable. Um, so all I knew was, go to undergrad, go to business school, and that's all I knew was like the first step, right? And then you get into business school, you start looking around at your peers, especially the ones a couple years older than you. What are they doing, right? And so a lot of the seniors, juniors had internships, right? So like right away as a freshman, I was like, oh, this is what these people are doing. I should get internships. So I started applying for internships, and they're like, you're like in your first quarter of school. I'm going to hire the senior, not you. And but I kept at it, and ended up working 5 internships in downtown Seattle, and each
Wow.
one was a little different. Let's see, we did like public relations for like a movie promotion company. I did oh gosh, I helped like a local like executive coach, which is marketing. I a lot of them are downtown. What else did I do? I did litigation consulting. So if you think like litigation is boring and being an attorney is boring, now you're building like all the exhibits. So like states are suing each other. You're building like their exhibits, like their data, their evidence
Wow.
to like argue against each other. Basically, I just kept getting stuck in a cubicle, and I didn't feel like I had impact. I feel like I could die and they just replace me with someone else, right? And so that taught me that taught me quite a bit about myself during those 5 internships, and I created like an 11 or 12 point heuristic on like what I wanted in a job, and then I started just applying that to every job out there. I mean, even like working at Blockbuster, like just like I was very open minded, right?
Hmm.
And the two that came up that I liked the most, one was dentistry. You know, you got to run your own business. There's a path. You get to take care of people. You get to work with a cool team. Like you get to work with your hands. I just love that. The second one was commercial real estate development. I love the idea of building things. I love strategy. I love like mapping out properties, acquisition, like all these things. But I had no money, no experience, and no contacts. And so between the two paths, right, the dentistry path seemed much more clear to me. I could see the steps to success in dentistry. And so between those two options, yeah, I committed to dental. So
Hmm. That's cool. And then it sounds like eventually that led you back into commercial real estate anyways.
yeah, you know how that goes. The first step was, become a dentist. And the second step was grow as a dentist clinically, and also as acquire business skills, right? Learn from other doctors and mentors, and that was my main focus. And then yeah, you need buildings to house dental practices. So the synergy was in front of me, and I actually had some capital, and I had some had a practice to pay the rent. And
And now,
uh,
did you start out like owning your own dental location, or were you an associate somewhere before you got, you know what I mean, you sharpened your teeth to start your own?
yeah, so my path was pretty slow, Austin. I tried to find a successful dentist in town to learn from and be my mentor, and I did. But successful dentists are often successful because they have good clinical skills. People like them, and they've been doing it for 30 years. They're not innovating,
Hmm.
and I have a drive to always innovate and make things better around me, both people and systems and things. And so very quickly I learned that wasn't going to fulfill me.
They're more, yeah, they're a little bit like if you have that, you know, rich dad, poor dad quadrant of like the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and the investor. You familiar with that?
Very familiar. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of times they just, you know, doctors and healthcare providers sit in that self-employed section, right? Like you've got a business that has employees and it's making you money, but it relies on you to be the sole proprietor, like to be really the breadwinner of that. And so you can get stuck in that because especially in healthcare, it's hard to find, you know, people who have 5 years of school or 7 years of school and who want to come work for someone else and have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt in order to get that accreditation. And so, you know, I totally get it, but there is a way to get out of it. Obviously, like DSOs have proven that as well as other things, and you've proven it too. You know, 5 going on 7 locations. But it sounds like one of the staples early on was the willingness to like look for other people to learn from. Would you say that you could attribute, you know, a lot of what you've accomplished to that? And was that something that you were intentional about, or did it just come naturally?
Yeah, no, I definitely had an insatiable curiosity from being a freshman in college all the way through, always asking questions, always trying to figure out the people who are ahead of me. You know, what's their mindset? What do they think about? How do they what's the filter through which they view the world. And so I had a peer group that was a great support group, and they really helped me become better as a young dentist, right? Like, you have your best month ever, and then somebody in your peer group is just like blowing you out of the water. You're like, oh man, I got to buckle down. I got to get better, right? Like, I think that's really important, having those peers, and then having the mentors. So John Meese, he's a dentist and leader in the industry, and he helped kind of open my mindset on the dental leadership side. And then David Phelps, just listening to his podcast and talking to him, he can open my mind on the real estate side a little bit, how to view things.
That's great. Yeah. And David Phelps was a guest on our show, and I was a guest on his show as well. So that's cool. Yeah. He's got a great thing. I mean, the way that he coaches how to diversify and invest in different real estate. And one of the things I like about what he talks about too is that, so often people, especially business operators, think that in order to diversify, they need to own their building that they're operating in. And the thing is, while it is, a little bit of diversification, the value of the building is tied to the success of the tenant. And so, like, if your business starts tanking and you're not able to, and you close, you're not able to sign that lease, now the value of the building has actually gone down a lot, right? And sure, maybe you can rent it out and then you'll recover. But if you don't, you're going to be stuck with a building that isn't as worth as much as you hoped it would be worth.
I would definitely get some fire insurance, flood insurance, if all your assets are in your practice in your building, right? Like, that is very high risk. I agree.
Yeah. So I like how he kind of coaches, to diversify your investments and other things that aren't directly correlated. I think single family, multifamily, commercial, like I think he's doing a bunch of stuff that's really cool. Okay. And then any other influences that were significant?
Gosh. Yeah, I'd have to go through my podcast and books, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Long
just
list.
a long list.
Yeah.
And lately, yeah, it's different parts of your life, right? At first, I wanted to be a clinical, gain my clinical skills. So you try to find people who are clinically ahead of you, right, and learn from them. And then, business leadership, wanted to start bringing on partners, and so John Meese was a good influencer there. And then, yeah, you have a little bit of extra money. What do you do with it? How do you diversify? Dave Phelps is a good influencer there. And then once we started getting a little larger, now you're looking at who are the leaders in the industry, the thought leaders about the future of dentistry, right? The wave of dental consolidation is here, and it's continuing to swell up larger and larger. And so, who understands that wave of consolidation and can help shape your mindset to understand how to not get crushed by the wave as a solo or group practitioner, or just a leader in dentistry? How do you ride that wave, right? And I think, I stumbled upon Emmett Scott's DSO Secrets podcast. And, right at the beginning, he really started laying down like how he views dentistry and the future of dentistry. And I've really appreciated him sharing. And then also the CEOs of some of the larger dental groups, right? I'm sure they have some secret sauce they don't like to let out too much, but in general, I feel like the leaders of these large dental groups are very much sharers. They believe in shaping dentistry in a positive way. And I've just been very thankful and grateful that the forefathers of group dentistry have really had that abundance mindset. I think they understand that, they want to make the public health, the oral health of America better. And I think it's just cool that they're approaching it this way. And then they understand implementation, right? You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't implement, it doesn't matter. So I've been very thankful for them the last, year and a half.
Yeah. I've been, relatively new to the dental industry personally. My my partner has been doing this for 14 years. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, but just, blown away with the kind of generosity of time and information that it seems like these CEOs are giving, like the willingness to, just speak and hop on podcasts and be generous with their time has been really, really cool. And I think at the end of the day, they realize like, it's like what dentistry has 40 or 50% market penetration, right? Like half the people in the US don't even go visit their dentist regularly. So it's like, it's a very blue ocean. Like sometimes you're in somewhat competition with each other, but a lot of it is just in creating more awareness around it. And I think that's what working together really helps. So, and then I wanted to ask you, how did you transition from, being an associate to owning your own practice? Like, because that's difficult in terms of like, obviously you learn a lot chair side, but now you've got to learn a lot of business skills. You have to select the right location unless you're acquiring, but either way, it involves somehow, raising capital or having money. So what was that process like?
Yeah, so I definitely found a mentor there as well. Life's short, right? Like I just turned 40 and I'm just like, whoa, what happened the last 10 years, right? And so, mentors are a catalyst, right? TED Talks, it's like a mentor is like the number one life hack, right? So in each area of my life where I try to grow, I try to find somebody. I look at the top 2 to 5 people who can support me in that and just kind of help me grow past that area. And a lot of mentors, right? You kind of learn what you learn in like a year from them, right? There's always more to learn, but specifically what they have to teach you, gosh, hopefully in 12 months you pick it up. And if you haven't, there's probably a disconnect in either the mentorship side or the learning side. So definitely found um, a course to learn from there. And yeah.
Okay. And so what were like some of the practical things they taught you? Like, did you have to go get bank debt? And then did you acquire a practice? Was it de novo? Did you like, if it was de novo, how important was that site selection to you?
Yeah, all the above. So I'll just go through our current list here in my brain. So yeah, first off is demographic mapping, right? There's different companies that do that and really just try to understand where need is right now, and then also where is growth happening, right? And then the upcoming future years. And then auditing that data. It's not always
Mhm.
correct, right? So really getting
Yeah.
in there. Sometimes you'll look at like one practice, but it looks like, oh, this is great. There's only one practice here. Oh, there's 10 doctors in there, right? Or vice versa. That's not actually a practice. That's a dentist's home, right? And so you got to kind of really audit that and, physical landmarks, right? When you're doing that too, there's like sometimes like a huge cliff or something or a river and there are railroad tracks that really separate things. So it
Yeah.
looks good.
Physical boundary.
Yep. So that's kind of step one. And then step two, gosh, we did de novo the construction process, and that's a huge learning curve, right? Like doing multiple, I don't know how many constructions I've done now, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, a lot. What I've learned is, gosh, I would hire a construction consultant. Budgets can get out of control, timelines can get out of control. You don't understand the contractor language, and even if you get lucky and get like a contractor who's really ethical, there's a level of accountability that an external construction consultant or developer would just add value in spades and brain damage, right? It's always like,
Yeah.
what are your costs, right? Time, money, brain damage. So I would highly recommend like you and Nathan. I know you guys help on the development side. So if somebody's doing like a ground up building or doing like a value add, like they buy an old strip mall and they're going to upgrade it and put a dental office in there and try to get some good tenants, high traffic, synergistic tenants, a PT, Starbucks, chiropractor, whatever that looks like for that client. I would highly recommend that.
Do you guys do exclusively retail locations for your practices?
Yeah, I mean, if you just listen to enough podcasts, read enough books, follow enough success stories, um, it's very hard to grow a general practice in a non-retail location. If
Do you think there's
you're in a
any exceptions to that?
Yeah, the exceptions are going to be niche, right? If you're the only one offering something that no one else is offering. And the second one is if most of your patients come from a referral base, right? Not from direct to consumer. So if you're
Which is the ultimate goal, right? Like every business wants patients that come exclusively from referrals because it doesn't cost anything. It's just also the hardest way. You have to be
right.
exceptional.
Yeah. So that's, word of mouth from your patients, but even more like specialists, right? They get funnels from, they get patients funneled to them from general dentists. So unless somebody is a specialist or they have a very niche market, I always tell people like, don't go into an office building. If you buy a practice in an office building and you understand that growth is going to be slow from there, and it's got good profit margins, good quality of life for you, yeah, that's fine.
Mm.
Do it, right? But don't like buy a practice in an office building and expect to get 50, 100, 200 new patients a month, even if you've got excellent marketing.
Right. Well,
It's
yeah, to me,
just,
it's just about stacking the deck in your favor, right? Like you can have a very profitable, successful practice in an office, but the chances are it'll never be as profitable or successful if you had that same practice in a good retail location. And so it's intimidating because, we look at the rent and it's like, oh man, this is whatever, $5,000 a month versus $12,000 or $10,000. It's like, feels like twice as much or three times as much. And so we, as humans, we think in terms of like percentages, but when you take a step back and you realize rent is only, 10%, 15% of whatever, maybe even 7% of your overall budget. And so it's like, you're only going from 7% to 12% or whatever. And now you are able to, of your expenses, but you're able to maybe double your revenue, right? And so it's like, when you think about it in terms of what are the odds that I can get more than, even though it's like $10 a square foot, more per year, like, which could break down to anywhere between $1,600 to $3,000 a month extra. What are the odds that I'll get as many patients, from this prominent, visible, easily accessible, patient-friendly location? They're probably pretty high, right? Most of the time, you're gonna get more than the extra rent that you pay.
it's a no-brainer in dentistry. So rents in dentistry are usually 6 to 8%, just on average. And compare that to most other businesses, right? Rents are a much higher part of their
Mm-hmm.
P&L. But then, like in efficient practices, like me and my buddies running across the country, I mean, we're pushing rents down to like 1.5%, right? And then it's like,
Oh,
it's just like, like you said, it's a no-brainer to invest there. Now, the hard part is if you're doing a de novo or you don't have a larger practice, right? It's a lot of money out on the front end when you don't have any income coming in or you have very small income coming in, right?
yeah.
So on the front end, the landscape which you describe looks very different for a dentist trying to choose a space with no income and a bank saying, "Hey, we're only going to loan you this much money," right? So once you have a successful practice, it's kind of a no-brainer. But gosh, getting the funding for that nice corner retail location, and running the P&L like the projections for your first 6, 12 months, it's for an inexperienced dentist, it would be very hard to swallow that. Whereas somebody who's done it before, they understand what they can produce. They understand what the P&L looks like. They understand how quickly they can grow a practice. I think they'd be much more comfortable with that. So even though I agree with you 100%, I completely understand why people choose lower rent positions on the front end, especially when they're inexperienced. That's a
Yeah.
hard pill to swallow when you're a young
Yeah,
dentist.
there's always exceptions for sure. I agree. So sounds like you started, or actually, did you end up leasing or buying your location when you started your first practice?
Yeah, like no money, right? So everything I did was, I mean, I don't know what I had in the bank account at that time, 20 grand, 50 grand, right? I'm a risk averse person, so I don't, I'd rather hold some money in the bank and not have stress about spending or those type of things. But still, like, compared to a building and everything, you just don't have money, and the bank doesn't really want to lend you on a building at that point because you don't have any income, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, definitely was a tenant. Um, Definitely tried to negotiate for some TI money. Definitely didn't get any, but I liked the location so much that I went for it. And eventually, once we did have some income and could support the building, the landlord, who doesn't usually sell, he owns, I don't know, hundreds of buildings. This had been kind of a slow building for him, and he needed some cash for some other reasons. So timing just worked out, and he ended up selling the building to me at what I feel like was a fair price. It wasn't his first offer. I had to counter him, and we met in the middle. And I think it was
Was it based on the rents? Like, was he doing it off of a cap rate?
I think a ransom analysis there. I don't know if he was using market comps or just trying to get his costs back out of the building. I don't know what he used to run some numbers, but we ran some numbers and felt like that was a little high. And so, but yeah, market comps and cap rates, those are the two that I usually use.
It's just always funny, like when you're the tenant trying to buy the building, you're working against yourself. Like, because the better you do, the more successful you are, the better your credit becomes, and then the lower the cap rate of the building, which means the higher the price. And so, yeah, it's just always
the landlord doesn't know that. They don't know that you're successful, right?
That's true. I guess yeah. If they don't know that, then that definitely helps.
They don't know that rent is 1.5% of our budget, right? They assume it's probably like 20%, like most other businesses. So
yeah,
or 10 or whatever.
And so was that your first like transition or introduction into real estate investing?
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay. And so then did you have other tenants, or were you like a single operator?
Austin, we occupied 1/3 of the building, but the other 2/3 was a gym owner. Snap Fitness. Yeah.
Fitness, nice. Nice.
Jake, super cool guy. He was awesome. He eventually wanted to sell the gym, but Snap required a 10-year lease to sell the gym. And so when he wanted that 10-year lease, I was like, listen, we're growing, we're busting at our seams. I can't give you a 10-year lease. And so he ended up finding another location. And once he found another location, we started construction.
Wow.
In the middle of COVID, started construction on expanding into the other 2/3 of that building.
So what year was this when you first bought your commercial real estate building?
Ooh, 2017 or 18.
Okay. Okay, cool.
In that range.
And so, and then you must have been busy in commercial real estate since then, because I know you're involved in a lot of projects. So let's walk. We've been kind of following the dentist timeline of your story, but let's walk through the commercial real estate just the real estate timeline of your story.
Yeah. So I think there's this concept of compounding knowledge or compounding action. So, my real estate, I had a little passion in the past. I learned a little bit, maybe listening to podcasts. Once I got the building, I started listening to more real estate stuff. It's really like diving in. And from a perspective of not having a little real estate, it seems like a rapid progression, right? Of doing this. Wow, you went from like nothing to this, right? But then when I talk to like the local developers who are worth like 500 million, like $1 billion, right? To them, it still seems very slow. So I think it's always perspective, right? When you're starting out, it seems like, wow, people are just taking off. But from a very experienced person, it's like, wow, you're still just kind of going slow and dinking around. You're not really committing to the process. So I think it depends on perspective. So yeah.
So you would be what Abraham Lincoln would consider sharpening the axe for the first several years.
Yeah. It looks like I do things fast, right? We had 1 practice last year. Now we have 5 and 6 and 7 under development, right? So that again, it looks like, whoa, like that's not 1 to 2 to 3, 4, right? That would be a typical growth curve that you see in dentistry. But if you look at the guys who are adding 30 practices a year, they're like, yeah, you're still kind of dinking around. So it's just all perspective. So I try to surround myself with the people who I want to become. And so like going from 1 to 5 to 7 doesn't seem fast to me. It seems slow because I've started surrounding myself around the people who are much faster and growing at a much faster rate. So with real estate, yeah, I got the first building. I started building my network and learning, right? So podcasts, coaching. I tried to find like a real estate development mentor. There's not a lot of real estate development coaching out there. The real estate developers do so well. They're so large. They don't typically have the time to do that, right? It's just maybe in retirement, but not while they're actively doing it. So that's kind of a hard thing to find.
And it's
So
such a
really,
weird business because the value of most businesses is in the operational cash flow, like dentistry or a gym or a restaurant, or literally anything. But in commercial real estate, I mean, the value of the business and the assets, and those are all like independently owned and operated. You know what I mean? And so it's just, yeah, it doesn't fit into these like nice, neat boxes that a lot of other businesses fit into.
it does not. So I found a real estate mentor. That was part of it. Listened to a lot of David Phelps. There were a couple other real estate podcasts I listened to a lot too. And then I started networking with all the local folks I could find. So like the largest tax owner, and I haven't confirmed this, but what I've heard, the largest taxpayer in Washington State isn't Bill Gates. It's a local real estate developer in Spokane. And he's probably like I think he's in his mid 80s now, right? So he's had a long history of doing things, but
Wow. Well,
learning from guys like
he can't be
that.
worth more than Bill Gates, right? He just maybe makes more income on
No,
paper.
yeah, taxes. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say more. Yep. So, so, yeah, just kind of learning from those folks, learning from brokers in town, right? Learning from bankers in town. All the stakeholders in the industry, just gathering information on how they view things. So when you're talking to bankers, you understand how they look at a problem. You talk to the broker, how do they look at the problem? You talk to the developer, how do they look at it? You talk to the contractor, how do they look at it? And once you gather information from all these different sources and then filter it through your own strengths, your own passions, your own vision, then clarity finally comes, right? This is what I want to do. And sometimes I just kind of dink around and try things. So, I did like an apartment syndication, right? From what I thought was probably the fastest growing, largest apartment syndicator, right? Like I wanted to see successful systems from the inside, right? So
What do you mean you
invest
did a syndication with him? Like you invested or you were involved on the GP side or what?
just LP, just learn, right?
Okay.
Like what does the process look like? What do the
Okay.
contracts look like, right? So it wasn't just an investment for me, it was an investment in learning. Same on self-storage. I found like a self-storage a company that I really liked, and I wanted to learn what their process looked like from the inside. And then yeah, so then I did a syndication with the local syndicator. What does their process look like, right? Compare the national people to the local people, right? And just gathering information. So for me, I will sacrifice. To me, the number one thing is learning, right? It's not the investment itself. So most people, when they look at syndication investments, that's Austin, right? You look at, number one, the operator, like who is this person? What's their experience? Do I trust them? Do I like their vision? Number two, like non-recourse, like, okay, I might lose the money I invest, but I don't want to lose anything
One
else,
was
right?
more. Yeah.
Like, yeah. And then you start looking at the deals. Well, maybe I'm a little different in this. For me, it's like, I'm throwing like, who can I learn from up in the top there, right? And then I'm going to invest with them. So, I did those syndications, and then, you can only grow so fast based off your income levels, right? And so when people reach that point, it's like, okay, well, I'll start syndicating or raising money some other way so I can scale up our growth. Well, the challenge there as a dentist was I was still in the chair, and I'm no longer in the dental chair, but I still,
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks. I still have time that I need to invest, supporting my team, right? And developing and syndicating, these are all like separate jobs with
Yeah.
huge amount of expertise, right? And so, I kind of, after learning how to syndicate a little bit and doing some experimentation on my own, I just was like, this is a lot. And especially like managing investors' expectations, right? Those are relationships. That's just like other relationships you have in your life. You have to invest time in them. These people aren't numbers, right? And so so I determined that I don't have the bandwidth to do syndications or learn the expertise to do syndications well, and really to investors. And so I found what my niche was, and my niche was going to be local development, either ground up or value add acquisition, and then kind of leverage our competitive advantage of having these dental practices. As you know, um, dental practices tend to move you towards a class A type retail space, especially if you do some upgrades on like a value add, or you build a decent ground up building, that there's synergies there. And so, like you mentioned, stacking the deck, I'm the same way. Like when I look at a building, I'm like, okay, I got to have great demographics, not just for our dental practice, but for other tenants. Um, there's just like, I just want to stack the deck, because good to great, you need to say no to the good so you can say yes to the great, right? And so there's lots of opportunity out there, but I want the deck stacked as much as possible in my favor, because between where you commit to your vision of building your building or doing a value add, and getting that thing fully leased up and refied or whatever your plan is, there's a whole bunch of problems that come in your way. And if your deck isn't stacked, your margins just take a hit until maybe you make nothing or you lose money, right? And so stack the deck.
Yep.
Especially at the beginning.
Yeah, stack the deck. Yeah, absolutely. So would you trade off lower returns in order to invest with somebody who has a better track record, in the sense of like you were talking about, you want to learn from that person, like that's a very valuable piece of the equation for you.
Mhm. Yeah, you got to look at what you're getting out of it. So what do I like about lower returns? I like lower returns if it's automated, right? Like, what are my costs on a deal? Opportunity costs would be like returns I'm comparing to, but also, risk, brain damage, those types of things. So, some people do, gosh, what are some low risk things out there? Yeah, life insurance policies, right? Like some sort of like whole or universal, right? If you run the numbers, sometimes your return's like 5%, right? But if you can tie up that policy, get 5% returns, someone's doing all the work for you. If you die, your family's still taken care of, right? There's like a way to mitigate your downside risk. Like Warren Buffett, right? He always talks about his investing. He may not have the greatest positive returns in an up market, but he really limits his downside in a down market, right? Which over time, like, it's good, right? So if I have a good quality of life, right? Dentist, like good income, good quality of life with my family, like I need to consider that as I do these things, my quality of life will increase a little bit, maybe, right? But if I don't hedge the risk, my quality of life could tank, right?
Right.
One of the number one like divorce factors is lack of money, stress, business stress, all those things. So in my mind, once you get to a certain level, you have way more to lose than you have to gain. So you always need to be managing that downside risk, just for your quality of life, your sanity, your health. Health is wealth, right? I'm 40 now. What worked at 30 isn't working at 40, so I have to commit to new health regimen, which I've done.
Yeah, I think that's true. You go through different stages of life where you have different risk appetites. And I think it's going to be really interesting, actually, what's going to happen to a lot of people, especially young millennials who invested early in things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and even Tesla to an extent that took off, and you get addicted to these 300, 400, 700% annual returns. And it's like, it's not sustainable. And so, I don't, it's not really creating like a sophisticated class of investors. It's kind of creating a get rich quick type group. And so it'll be interesting to see like how many people who became like relatively overnight millionaires are able to maintain their wealth, chasing these returns versus like, because at some point, you need to pivot. It makes sense to take risk, when you don't have a lot. Maybe you could make an argument not, but let's just say it does. At some point, it makes sense to pivot back to the traditional, safe 7-8% returns when you've got a lot more to lose. And so, yeah, I think like seeing where the cookie crumbles, seeing how many people are able to maintain the wealth that they've created is going to be really interesting to watch. And so, on that note, like, do you invest in crypto at all?
No, for those reasons.
Not
I'd
at
rather
all.
bet on myself, right? It could do really well, right? But it might not. And then there's also government regulation risk, right? Like as we saw, most people thought a lot of savvy investors thought the market was going to tank, right? Well, government got involved and made sure the market didn't tank, right?
Mhm.
And so there's regulation, government risk in this, and same with crypto, right? The government could release something tomorrow that drastically affects the price of your crypto, right? Based off of policy. So I would rather invest in things where those risks are much smaller, right? There's still real estate risk, as some of the tax benefits of real estate may be changing here soon, but I'd rather bet on myself than bet on something I can't control and doesn't grow me, right? Like you
Yeah.
said, these people are, yeah, they might have huge returns, but they're not becoming sophisticated investors.
Mhm.
So over the long term, you win, you win, you win, you lose, and now
Yeah.
you're back down to ground zero.
Well, investing is the ultimate example of the infinite game, right? Like you could have a great month, you could have a great year, you could have a great couple years, but like very few people make it as like Warren Buffett did, where they lived their whole life with successful compounding. And it's just like
Yep.
one of those things, like you hear about it in real time, in the news and on social media, and you get FOMO. But like I'm really curious, like, are these guys going to end well? Like, are they going to finish well?
I think the 5% will who
Yeah.
who develop the diversity and the sophistication, but it's like professional athletes. Anybody else that strikes a big lottery winners, right?
Yeah.
1% retains.
So, and it sounds like you kind of decided on maybe an asset class or an area that you wanted to get into. You find a mentor, you try and learn as much from them, and then moving forward, you put it together and decide what things you're going to do yourself versus what you're going to bring on partners for. Does that kind of explain your mental process?
Yeah, every year I relook at it, right? What are my options? What are my competitive advantages? How can I stack the deck?
Yeah.
What kind of bandwidth do I have? What are my passions? What's my risk appetite? And then each year we decide to do something different. Development, our last project, man, it's probably going to be 3 years from when I bought the land to when we get the building filled up. That's not the fastest
Yeah.
process, right? Returns might be good, we shall see, but huge amount of risk, right?
Yeah.
COVID hit, like the bank said, yeah, we'll loan on this. They didn't, right? I had to find a partner we had to go from 25% down on the project to like 40%.
Wow.
The environment changed, right? And so you have all that money and time tied up in the land, in the legal documents, and all of the permitting, right? I mean, there's this huge risk there. And so I tend to learn from stuff. And once I learn from stuff, you get smarter.
Yeah.
Velocity, you start learning about things like velocity. Same on dental startups. Yeah, you can have them in really good demographic areas and have competitive advantages that way. But gosh, it's a lot of brain damage and time before you, one, get it constructed, two, ramp it up, right? And so Yeah, I just try everything and then reevaluate once you do it.
And I mean, I think it's a great model, like a great way to lens to look at things when you're going to try and do something new. But what are you most excited about in the future right now? Like you've in several different asset classes in real estate, you know, you're growing your dentistry practice as well. Like, what do you think has the most potential upside, and where do you find yourself dedicating most of your time?
In real estate, I still like the synergy between the dental and the retail. Just kind of getting things up to class A. If you look at office space, right? Like the cap rates aren't as good as retail. So when people are like, I talk to bankers and appraisers, they're like, "Oh, you're medical." I'm like, "I'm medical retail.
Yeah,
I'm not medical office, right?"
right. There's a difference.
So I try to influence those
Medtail,
cap.
as we like to call it.
What's up?
Medtail is like the new phrase kind of floating around.
Medtail. Okay. I like that. Thank you for adding to my vocabulary. I appreciate that. So we're medtail, right? So that's a 10 to 15% increase in value typically, right? With the cap rates. So I like that. I like finding areas that are underserved and developing new solutions. So we put like general, pedo and ortho all under one roof, right? So certain demographic areas don't lend themselves to an orthodontist or pediatric dentist. They're just not large enough, but those areas are still underserved. So if you can put a practice in there that doesn't need a full-time orthodontist or doesn't need enough patients to support a full-time orthodontist or pediatric dentist, just 2 days a week, gosh, now you're serving the community in that area, which is like your mission, right? Your impact, what makes life worth it, serving others. And you're finding synergy and you have a competitive advantage. So that's one thing I like doing, is putting everything under one roof, just bringing convenient, sophisticated systems on top of the patient experience and quality of care focus. So kind of merging those two worlds together, right? Merging the mom and pop, we love patients, we care about our patients, we love the relationships with our team, and merging that with like the systems of McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
And you can do that. That's a very nice sweet spot to be in. In medical, I don't know from working on the inside, but like a Mayo Clinic, a Cleveland Clinic, those types of people said, "Hey, we don't want to be like corporate dentistry that focuses on corporate medicine that focuses on profits. We want to focus on like positive outcomes for our patients and really caring for them." So I'm excited about that. Just bringing that to our local area, bringing convenience, relationships, just a better level of dentistry, changing that 40% number of market penetration, to increase that, right? Like we failed as dentists to provide a good service that meets patients where they're at, right? If we only had that type of penetration. Emmett Scott likes to say 110% people, have cell phones, right? So some people have two. They've built cell phones that have really met what the public wants. Dentistry
Yeah.
hasn't done that. I'm not the only stakeholder here though. So on the dental side, I'm working on that, but I'm also working on it from the biggest gorilla in our state in dentistry, which is Delta Dental. So I joined their member advisory panel this year. So, on a personal goal, if I want to create positive impact for dentistry, well, I can chip away at it in my little corner of Washington and northern Idaho and Oregon, and however far we grow. But gosh, why don't you get to the table with the biggest stakeholder who's influencing dentistry in our area and learn things from their perspective, right? What are they trying to achieve? How are they trying to achieve it? And I feel like I can make even more impact teaming up with the biggest stakeholders. So
Yeah.
um,
That's brilliant. And yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, personally, I do like a lot of investing with the market, and then I have some Airbnbs that I'm looking at, and then I dabble around in cryptocurrency. But I think like the thing that I'm most excited about is medtail, is medical retail. I think, in general, the dentistry is still undervalued when you consider the fact that dental has the lowest likelihood of defaulting on their lease out of any business, right? And they're still only trading at an 8.5 cap. I think there's a lot of upside there that's not yet found its way, to the market pricing. And so, but like, what is your strategy? So it obviously helps that you guys are one of the main tenants that you go into, that you're going to be commanding a really good cap rate. So that allows you to take a little bit more risk, or allows you to take down a little bit more expensive locations, because you've got at least one tenant accounted for. So do you try and build in locations that you just have high conviction about that are going to be easy to lease out, or do you talk to other tenants and organizations ahead of time to pick location where they can sign you the lease and then you go and develop for them?
Yeah, I understand that the best way to do this is to have a bunch of signed leases before you ever build anything. Like you get a signed purchase agreement with the, like if it's land or a building, right? But you have contingencies in there based off of like getting tenants, right, signed up. So you don't actually buy the building or the land until you actually have signed tenants. That is the best way to do it. Lowest risk. Bank loves it. I just haven't found people who are willing to sign things until they have a physical building, right? It's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. So um, I know the developer, especially like big box retailers, right? You'll get like a Home Depot to say, yep, we want a building in that area, or a grocery store. They sign the lease and then you build it. I don't have that kind of expertise. And so instead, I just go. So I just start buying the building and then I start talking to people, right?
How do you decide how big you want to buy, or do you identify locations you want to do a de novo practice and then just kind of take down whatever's available?
Stack the deck, right? So where's the best place for a location? What buildings are available? What land's available? And then when I find like a building or land that's at a good price point in one of these stack the deck areas, great demographics, it fits our business well, fits other businesses well, then I'm open to the solution. I can't pick one area and force it, right? There might not be something that pops up there. Recently, so I bought the land that we're developing and building on right now, and that was a good price. There's another area that's super high growth. Like I think this is going to be an amazing area to have a dental practice, but the developer wants 4 times as much for the land as I paid in this other area, right? And with building costs and everything, like I run the numbers and I'm like, wait, even though the demographics here are amazing and the growth here is amazing, like it is going to be so expensive to develop the land and building that like it just doesn't make any sense for me. The timeline on it to get the development going, all that money tied up. I mean, that's probably like a 3-year window before you even get the practice open, right? So you've got all that money, all that energy tied up in 3 years, and it's not giving you any returns. So you can't let, this is the perfect place for a practice. You can't let that be your only factor, right? You got to kind of weigh all those other costs as well. So
Yeah. And so are you pretty much like, do you ever buy existing buildings, or are you pretty much buying land to develop from the ground up?
both. So the last building I bought is an existing building. A lot of the banks are kind of cleaning house on locations right now. And so the building I got, it had a bunch of restrictions on it. There's a Walgreens next door. So there was like a laundry list of restrictions on what could go in there. But dentistry was not a restriction. And so it's next to a Walgreens. Walgreens are typically good locations. And so that was a synergistic fit for us, right? And price was lower because of all the restrictions. So we got it at a good price. It also needs a lot of updates. So, people who didn't have the vision there might have passed on it because it kind of looks like a bunker. But I had the vision that, hey, we can update this bunker. We don't mind the restrictions. This is a high traffic area with a lot of growth. The urban boundaries. Some cities have urban boundaries, right, where you can't like build outside of that. And so if you have restrictions of urban boundaries, there are a few growth areas. So, we want to put our practices in areas that have growth. We want high traffic. We want visibility. We want underserved, right? And maybe because we're ortho, pedo, and general, it doesn't have to be underserved in all three. Maybe 2 of the 3 are underserved, and we can still be successful. So that's a competitive advantage on the dental side as well.
Yeah. And so what about, and that makes sense. Thanks for explaining that to everybody. And what are your thoughts about inflation in terms of like how it's driving costs of labor up, and then cost of materials up. What do you think about people who are trying to time the market to wait for that to go back down?
You got a loaded question there. Time to market. I was a finance in undergrad, so yeah. Anytime somebody says time to market, my eyebrow raises. Good
Yeah.
luck. What's interesting. I am not an opinion person. I'm a learn person. I try not to have opinions. I try to just learn. If I were to propagate some sort of like vision, that'll probably be wrong, because 99% of the time when people say something's going to happen in the future, they're wrong. I would propagate that maybe COVID and the interest rates are going to be the largest, are going to be looked back on this time as the catalyst for the consolidation of dentistry. So let's say I'm a general practitioner, solo general practitioner, right? As of this year, I think general practitioners are now smaller than group practices for the first time. So this is we're 49% of the market. Okay. Well, average income of a dentist is $180,000 in Washington State. Okay. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's $200,000 for a GP. Okay. Why am I a GP? Maybe I like the autonomy, right? General dentist. I like the autonomy of having my own business. I like the feeling of being an owner of my own business. I love my patients. I love my team. Well, as you know, as a general dentist, you got to wear a lot of hats: insurance, compliance, marketing, accounting, finance, banking, right? You have to wear every hat under the sun in a business, and you're not good at any of them, right? You're a master of none, right? When you're doing that many things. And so why do you do it? Well, those other factors kind of the positives outweigh the negatives. Well, if we have two factors here. So COVID and interest rates are changing this. So interest rates are pushing up costs, right? But reimbursements on dental are pretty much fixed. So you're getting squeezed. This is how much you're making. Maybe you're producing more, but a lot of dentists at a certain point, they just kind of produce the same. They're not growing anymore, right? So all your costs, you're just getting squeezed. So your financial incentive to wear all those hats and have all that stress is shrinking. Also, the change, the pace at which dentistry changes, and you have to stay up with it, is rapidly changing as well, right? Technology, all these things. So dentistry is changing a lot quicker. So you have to change a lot faster. And then all the stress, right? Dealing with government compliance, dealing with patient concerns over COVID, dealing with team concerns over COVID, right? It's just not fun. Nobody enjoys that. So I feel like the interest rates on the financial side, and then the COVID just making things not fun, are going to increase the curve on consolidation in dentistry. You saw it last year. There was a huge amount of deal flow in Q4 of last year. This year, there's been a lot of deal flow. And I think it's going to continue. And then, threat of capital gains tax going up, that's another piece of it. But at the end of the day, people tend not to make logical decisions. They tend to make emotional decisions, right?
You justify it with logic.
Yeah. And so if you're like, I'm not making any money and this sucks, right? You're like, what? These guys, you can go work for Heartland and make, as much money as I'm making now, right? And just go punch in my clock and leave. Like, why am I putting myself through this for this vision, this vision of the past of being this solo dentist who has this nice practice on the corner or wherever, right? This vision, the vision that got you into dentistry, guess what? Who moved my cheese, right? The industry's shifted, right?
Yeah.
What you got into dentistry, that's not how dentistry is anymore. And you're only willing to put up with so much. And yeah, so that is the vision that I might toss out there, that I think we're already in the middle of it. I think you're just going to see rapid consolidation. It's just not the 60-year-old dentists that are selling anymore. It's the 40-year-old dentist. It's the 45-year-old dentists, right? They they've lived their vision for 5-10 years and are like, yeah, I'm good. let's hand off all these other stressful hats outside of
Yeah.
clinical dentistry to
Try it
somebody else.
yourself, find out what you like and don't like, and then decide, okay, maybe I'll take some chips off the table and delegate some responsibilities.
And I think that's kind of your niche too, like you're seeing as people transition their practices, right? They're also transitioning the real estate surrounding those practices, right? And so, selling a building, helping dental groups buy buildings, like I think there's a lot more deal flow going. So I think I think your niche is going to continue to grow as well as you serve both, dentists and serve groups, whatever their needs are.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes the transactions get bottlenecked, right? When you've got a doctor who owns the real estate and they are partnering with the DSO, they're getting acquired or merging or whatever you want to call it, and they want to kind of take their chips off the table with the real estate as well. That can bottleneck that transition because DSOs either can't or are unwilling to buy the real estate because it conflicts with their ability to grow the number of practices that they're either buying or starting. And so, yeah, in situations like that, we love, purchasing the real estate to help facilitate those transactions and act as the investors and landlords for the groups because they're great tenants, like DSOs are and dentists in general, they're just great tenants. And so, I think the future is bright there. And so, like you were laughing at time in the market. Like I agree. I think it's really hard to time the market. Everybody, I'm still guilty of it, to an extent, even though I know it's silly because you just can't help but think that things seem so, expensive right now that it gives you analysis paralysis. You just sit here stuck waiting for things to go down. But like, there's no guarantee that it's going to go down. In fact, it probably won't go down given the things that you indicated, such as low interest rates right now, capital gains tax. The threat of going that up is going to increase deal flow. And then just the inflation from printing money and increasing minimum wage and having unemployment, like those things all drive up price and increase inflation. And so is the opportunity cost of staying on the sidelines going to pay off more so than like waiting to, then the money that you'll save from waiting? Like probably not. And that's assuming that it goes down, right? If it doesn't go down and you're sitting here on the sidelines waiting for it to go down, then you may never get started. And so like, if you had to wait for a bad market to take action, then most people would just be waiting. You know what I mean? Like you'd never have the opportunity to start a business or invest in real estate or anything like that.
Yeah, and like you said, you can't. You don't know that we're at the top of the market, but we're at the top of the market historically, right?
Yeah.
So it's like what would make sense in a down and up market, right? And if you're just worried about being at the top of the market, right? And so there's asset classes, notes, turning over homes that are smaller in value, right? And reselling those kind of short. Other things is debt, right? Like banks are lending at X,
Yeah.
right? And inflation's X. Like, gosh, debt already, leveraged debt already made sense as a real estate investor, right?
Yeah.
And
Now it
so
really makes sense.
now it really makes sense as long as you have enough cash reserves in case something happens, you lose tenants, you lose a quarter of your tenant, or your practices start becoming very unprofitable. As long as you got enough cash to kind of back that up, gosh, I guess debt is probably my favorite investment right now.
Yeah.
Like I'll take as much as you'll give
But
me.
yeah, 3% of, to take on debt at 3% interest rates is literally lower than the inflation rate right now. You know what I mean? When you've got an inflation rate of 4%, like unless you're just an idiot with your money, it's really hard to lose. You can put that into almost anything that's going to be profitable for you.
Yeah, so I guess that would be my only recommendation is debt. But then again, who knows? Something might come up, and I'm like, wow, I guess that wasn't the right call. Who knows?
Right.
But I love those fixed rate loans. My gosh, like some of the ones I'm seeing, like you said, 3%, 25-year, 30-year fix. Gosh,
Even
isn't
4% is
SBA?
great,
What?
even 4% is still a great price
Oh
for 30
yeah,
for 30 years or 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, and for commercial properties.
you get that fixed in on. It's just great. Apartments is one thing I might start developing. I have some partners who are very experienced apartment developers,
Ah,
and the loans they're getting, I'm just like, holy cow. And then locally, the values, I mean, it's all regional, and we're already kind of took a jump, but like around my area, we're among the top in the nation for escalation in apartment rents the last year. Gosh, I think vacancy rates are like 1% here. So
wow.
like per door, you were seeing valuations of like, what were they like 135, 140, right? You were maybe 2 years ago, you're building them for 110 and you're getting valued at like 130, 135, right? Now, like you're building them for like 130 to maybe 150, depending on, price of lumber today. Uh, but then the valuations now, like as of like last month, are coming in at like 200,000,
Wow. Wow.
right?
So
Like,
it
yeah.
still makes sense to buy. Yeah, it's a good rule of thumb to look at. Is like, yeah, what's your cost to develop new versus buy existing? And so right now we're just seeing things all over the board because in some places around the country, you're looking at the cost to build is 180 per unit, but you can buy for 150, right? And then it's
Yep.
like buy that all day. Like if you can
Yep.
buy for less than the cost to build, I mean,
Yep.
that it's just common sense, right? Like,
Yep.
especially if you're using debt at cheap interest rates that is going to lose value over time. Yeah, it's a
Yep.
good in that sense. Like you can definitely combat and be competitive with the like a expensive market.
Yep. Yep. I
Um,
agree.
that's great. Okay, so then final question: like, what podcasts are you currently listening to that you are your favorites that you'd like and would recommend?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me look at my history here. Um, I like Joe Fairless's podcast. I think they get really specific and nitty gritty on the best real estate investing advice ever. Some of the episodes are really like specific and actionable. Those are my favorite types of things. It's nice to hear people's stories, but I love like I love mindset podcasts that help like frame, like I said, how I view the world. But then I like nitty gritty podcasts that like teach me things. Um, I also like DSO Secrets. Like I said, as we grow our dental group, it's good to get that kind of influence. Um, I also like these guys in Texas. Sorry, I think I did the hot yoga this morning. I think
No problem.
it drained me a little bit. What is that real estate show in Texas? Yeah, it doesn't
Bigger
matter. I
pockets? No,
apologize. What?
not. Are you talking about bigger pockets?
Oh, bigger pockets is more focused towards your
Residential.
yeah, and I don't want to do anything that's less than 98 units, right? Because it takes time, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the typical curve. Why? No, now I'm doing duplexes. Now I'm doing quads. Now I'm doing small apartments, right? So like, I'm not interested in anything less than 98. Old Capital. I
Okay.
don't know if you listen to Old Capital at
I
all.
haven't.
They've got a kind of a fun podcast to listen to. So
That's great.
yeah. So
Okay. And so yeah, this has been super helpful. I love the stuff about mindset, this stuff about finding mentors in that area, working with them, even if you have to, invest with them at a lower rate of return to the benefits of what you can learn from them. That's all really interesting way of looking at things. And I think it's smart. And so if anybody, they want to get in touch, maybe for any number of reasons, I guess it would be partnering with you on development or being an associate or one of your practices or working with you, like what would be a good way to just learn more or get in touch or anything like that?
sure, you can text me, area code 206-755-6436. You can email me, River, River, Cochran, Cochran @gmail.com.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll write those in the show notes for everybody to listen to or to look at, as well as the podcast. And yeah, this is great. I think it's always good talking to optimistic people who are getting things done. And so appreciate your time.
Austin, I appreciate you running this podcast and kind of connecting the dots for us dentists on the real estate side, and then also trying to serve. I mean, there's a lot of lack of knowledge about real estate in dentistry, and there's a lot of solutions that can be provided for both people acquiring dental practices and also the dentist. So I appreciate you adding value to our space and coming at it from an education side, not so much a sales approach.
Mhm.
I think as dentists, we're very sensitive to the sales approach, and I
Yeah.
appreciate your education approach. That really
Oh
resonates
yeah.
with my value system. So grateful
Well,
for you.
you're welcome, and I appreciate that. So it means a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Thanks.